50 years ago the sky tore open and something poured through. They called it the ether. It did not come to kill us, it came to change us, and it did not ask first. Almost nobody could take it. Those who could not are still here in the wet gray bottom of the city, and the world has a word for them. Static, it is not a kind word. The boy in the third bunk from the wall is 16 years old, and his name is Kai. He has 4 minutes before the work whistle, and he spends all 4 of them lying still, listening to the building breathe. There is a steel tag on a cord around his neck. Every person who survived their first day in the ether wears one. It has a single letter stamped into it, and that letter is the whole of what the world intends to say about him. They test you when you are 12. Kai remembers the hall being very clean. That is the detail that stayed with him. Everything down here is filthy, and up there the floor shone. The test is simple because the people who built it are only interested in one question. You stand in front of a wall, you use whatever the ether gave you, and a machine measures what comes out of you. The girl ahead of him cracked the wall, and they wrote a letter on her file that changed her family forever. Kai stood where she stood and looked at the wall and saw exactly where it would break. He told them, he pointed at it. The technician looked at the machine, which said that nothing at all had left the boy, and wrote the letter that machine told him to write. It would be easier if they had been cruel. They were not. They were busy. There were 200 more children in the hall that day, and the machine is never wrong about the only thing it can see. F does not get training. F does not get a unit or a contract or a future. F gets sent down into the rifts to dig, because the crystal down there is worth a great deal more than the people who bring it up. A rift is a place where the ether pools thick enough to see. Go inside one and you will change faster than anywhere on Earth, or you will die faster. The company sends people who are cheap to replace. They are called divers. Kai has done 406 shifts. He knows how the rope smells and how long a bad cough lasts, and which of the enforcers will take a portion of your haul if you look him in the face. And down in the blue dark, where nobody important is watching, he uses the one thing the ether actually gave him. He looks at a crystal and he sees the seams inside it, where it is holding, where it wants to come apart. He puts his thumb on the one place that matters and the whole thing splits open clean. The graders had a name for it, fault line. They wrote it on his file the same day they wrote the F, and they were not being sarcastic. It is exactly what it says it is. And it is worth nothing, for a reason nobody has ever had to explain to him twice. Every crew already carries a scanner that finds those same seams, faster, and it does not need feeding. A boy who can do the work of a cheap machine is not an asset, he is a spare part. Kai has never argued with that because it is true. There is one more thing about his sight, and he has never told anybody because he has never known what to call it. It does not stop at stone. He sees those same points in steel, in machines, in living things, in places where no crack could possibly run. He wondered about it for years. Then he stopped because wondering never once put food in front of him. The whistle goes at the 11th hour. 600 people come up out of the ground at once, and the light hurts every one of them. Kai gets in the queue at the pay window and watches the man in front of him argue about a deduction, and lose, the way everybody always loses at that window. Then he goes to read the board, because the board is the only thing in his life that ever changes. Tomorrow they're sending his crew down into a rift on the eastern line. Kai reads the number twice. Nobody has worked that rift in 14 months. It was closed for readings. Kai knows this because Kai reads the board every single day, and he has never once seen that number come back. He tells himself the obvious thing: readings drop, rifts reopen. Somebody in an office decided there was money down there again, and that is the whole of it. And he almost believes it, all the way back down into the sprawl, where 3 people are waiting to hear whether they got a shift at all. There is a stairwell behind the noodle stalls on Kettle Row, where 4 people have been eating dinner together for 2 years, because it is dry, and because nobody chases them off it. Sable is talking. Sable is always talking. Tonight it is a plan involving a stolen cart, a cousin who does not exist, and a fortune in salvaged wire. Dolan says nothing for a long time and then says one sentence that takes the whole plan apart. Sable calls him a traitor. Dolan goes back to eating. And Ren counts. She does it every night. She takes the day's coins out of her sock and lays them along the step and adds the number out loud. A residency permit for the middle terraces costs 11,000. She has 460. She has explained the arithmetic to Kai many times and it never improves, and she keeps counting anyway. She is 12, she should not be on a diver roster at all. There is a rule about it. There is also a form that says she is 15, which somebody filled in, and nobody has ever asked a second question about it. She asks Kai what the middle terraces are like. He has never been to the middle terraces. He describes them anyway in detail, and he has been improving the description for a year and a half. Trees along the walkways, he tells her. Windows that open. A room where the water comes out warm. Sable shouts that this is a filthy lie and that nobody's water comes out warm. This is the part Kai will remember, not the rift. This, 4 people on a wet step arguing about warm water. Then he tells them about the roster, and about the rift on the eastern line that has been closed for 14 months, and the stairwell goes quiet. Sable takes it exactly the way Sable takes everything. If it is reopening, he says, then it has been sitting untouched for 14 months, and it will be packed to the roof with crystal nobody has cut yet. And that is not stupid, that is exactly what a closed rift means, and it is why every diver on Kettle Row would fight to be on that roster. Kai cannot explain what is bothering him, so he says nothing. Dolan watches him not saying it. Dolan always notices. He nudges Kai's boot with his own and asks, in 4 words, whether they should refuse the shift. Refusing a shift means losing the roster. Losing the roster means the queue, and the queue means weeks. Ren has 460 coins. Kai says no, it is fine. It is a good haul. He does not sleep. He lies in the 3rd bunk from the wall and turns it over, and every time he turns it over it comes out the same. A rift is reopened because somebody wants what is in it. That is all. In the morning the eastern line has a new fence, and new lamps, and more enforcers on the ramp than Kai has ever seen at a working rift. Only 1 crew is going down. Kai counts the assembled workers twice because at a reopening you would send 20 crews. They have sent 4 children. The enforcer running the shift is in a very good mood. He is showing something to another guard, holding it up to the light, laughing about it. Some dead relic, he says, won it off a supply sergeant at cards. Does not work, never did. There is a collector in the upper city who pays 4 months of wages for these. Kai walks past it with his eyes down, because you do not look at an enforcer's hands, and because it is a piece of junk, and because he has other things on his mind. Ren is frightened this morning. She hides it well now, which is its own kind of sad. She finds his sleeve. Stay behind me, Kai tells her, both eyes on my back, same as always. She nods and lets go and goes to get her sack. The enforcer counts them off and walks them down himself, grumbling about quotas, the relic still swinging at his hip. 4 divers and 1 board guard, going into a rift that has been sealed for over a year. And Sable was right, that is the thing Kai keeps coming back to afterwards. Sable was completely right, the walls are thick with it, 14 months of untouched crystal, glowing everywhere they turn. For 1 hour it is the best shift any of them have ever had. Sable talks, Dolan carries double. Ren finds a shard as long as her forearm and shrieks with joy, and the sound goes up and up into the dark. Then the map in Kai's eyes changes. Deep in the rock, a current he has never seen before begins to bend, dragging all the loose ether in the cavern toward one hungry point. Every diver learns one reading by heart because it is the one that kills you. It is the shape the ether makes when it has stopped building a creature and started building a monster. He sees it seconds before the scanner on his wrist even begins to stir. Up, he says, now, do not ask, and behind them at the mouth of the passage, a slab of ether-forged steel begins to come down. The door comes down with a sound like the end of an argument. Then there is no daylight anywhere in the world, and the only light left is the blue of the crystal and whatever is coming up the tunnel behind them. Sable reaches it first and hits it with both hands, and then with a pick, and then with both hands again. Ether-forged steel does not care. The enforcer arrives half a second later and shoves him aside and starts shouting into his collar radio, and gets nothing back but the sound of his own breathing. Open it, he says, then louder. Open it, there are people in here, I am in here. And that is the moment Kai understands the whole shape of it, all at once, the way you understand a sentence you have been reading 1 word at a time. A rift closed for 14 months and reopened for exactly 1 crew, 4 children and no other teams, twice the usual enforcers on the ramp and all of them staying outside. They were never reopening this rift, they were baiting it. And they did not tell the guard, because a guard who knows the plan behaves like a man who knows the plan. Sable tells him to shut up. Sable says it is a fault, Door's fault all the time. Sable says it with his hands shaking, and he does not believe a word of it, and he needs Kai to say it too. Kai does not answer because in his eyes the whole cavern has begun to wane. Every loose thread of ether in the air is bending one way now, toward the black tunnel, faster and faster, into something that is drinking it. Then the drinking stops, which is worse. It means the thing at the other end is full and finished and paying attention. It comes out the way a landslide comes down a hill. Whatever it used to be, the ether has been rebuilding it in the dark for 14 months, and nothing told it when to stop. Ren does not scream. That is the detail Kai cannot get out of his head afterwards. She just takes hold of the back of his jacket, exactly the way she promised she would. Dolan moves without being asked. He puts his big body between it and the smallest person in the room, and he does not say anything, because to Dolan it was never a decision. The enforcer stops hammering. He turns with his back to the door and draws his service pistol, and for one moment he is not a man who takes a portion of your haul. He is just somebody who wants to go home. He fires 4 times, and he is not a bad shot. It makes no difference at all. The Twisted does not slow, does not flinch, does not appear to notice that it is being shot. Then it draws in a breath that pulls the loose ether out of the entire chamber, and every hair on Kai's arm stands up, and it lets go. A wall of raw ether comes down the cavern. It should end him. Kai is already turning away from the light, so he almost misses the only important thing that happens today. The dead thing on the guard's hip is not dead anymore. Kai sees it and nobody else does. The blast bends, it thins. It pours into that tarnished old revolver the way water finds a drain, and it does not come out the other side. The smoke clears and the man is standing there untouched, staring down at the worthless antique he was going to sell for 4 months of wages. He has 1 second to understand what he is holding. Kai will think about that second for years, whether the man was afraid or delighted or simply confused. 1 second is all he gets. Whatever that thing catches, it does not catch claws. The relic skids into the rubble 20 steps away and lies there, burning with everything it has just swallowed, and it might as well be on the other side of the world. Then it turns on the children, and the world stops being anything Kai can read fast enough. Dolan does not move backwards. He has never moved backwards in his life. He steps into it and swings a mining pick at a mountain. The pick breaks. Dolan does not let go of it. He shouts at the others to run, and it is the loudest Kai has ever heard him, and it is the last thing he ever says. He buys them 3 seconds. Kai has spent every day since trying to decide whether he should have screamed at him to run instead, and there has never been an answer that helps. 3 seconds is enough for Sable to get them behind a spur of rock. It is not enough for anything else. In the quiet after, Kai looks past the rock at a gun lying in the rubble, still burning with all that stolen light, and begins to measure the distance. Behind the rock, Sable is already making a plan, because that is what Sable does instead of being afraid. There is a service shaft on the far wall, too small for the thing in here with them, big enough for a 12-year-old. He's not talking about all 3 of them, and everybody understands that immediately. Ren says no. She says it 4 times, and she is still holding the back of Kai's jacket while she says it. Kai looks at the shaft and at the gun burning in the rubble, and he does the arithmetic that he will be doing for the rest of his life. 20 steps to the relic, 40 to the shaft, 1 monster in between. So he gives the only order he has ever given in his life. Sable takes Ren to the shaft. Kai makes the noise. Sable stares at him. Sable, who has an answer for everything, does not have one. He says, "You are the worst liar I have ever met." Then he takes Ren's wrist. Kai stands up in the open and throws a crystal shard at a monster the size of a building. It works. That is the terrible part. It works perfectly, and it turns and it comes. He runs for the relic. 20 steps has never been so far. Behind him he can hear Sable and Ren going the other way along the wall, and he does not look, because looking would tell it where to go. And then a slab of crystal comes down out of the roof, shaken loose by everything, and it comes down on the far wall. Sable pushes Ren clear. He gets her clear. He does not get himself clear. The noise stops everything, including the thing chasing Kai, which turns toward the new sound the way it turned toward the old one. Ren is standing alone in the open, 40 steps from a shaft she can no longer reach, in front of a hole where the wall used to be. And in the middle of all of it, burning in Kai's eyes the way it has burned since he was a child, is that point. 1 small red mark, low on the creature's flank, sitting there as calmly as it sits on cracked stone. He has never once had anything to put into that point, not a weapon, not a gift, not the strength in his own arms. Today, for the first time in 16 years, there is a gun lying by his foot with a cavern's worth of ether inside it. He does not know what it is, he does not know what it does. He knows two things: it is full because he watched it fill, and it is a revolver, and everybody on earth knows how to use a revolver. So he does not aim at the monster. Nobody ever taught him anything. He does the only thing his eyes have ever offered him. He puts the barrel on that little red point and he pulls the trigger. Everything that monster spent trying to kill a guard comes back out at once, into a spot the size of a coin. And the twisted stops, not wounded, stopped. For one long impossible half-second every glowing vein in that mountain of a creature stutters and goes dark at once, as though something reached inside and pulled the single thread the rest of it was tied to. Kai sees it because Kai is the only one looking. A scanner would have caught it too, but nobody in the history of this world has ever had a reason to be reading instruments while a twisted is busy killing them. He is half a second too slow. He will carry that half second for the rest of his life. And that is when a man in gold and white drops out of the dark above them, lands on the stunned creature's back, and kills it in a single stroke. He has been on that ledge the whole time, waiting for the thing to burn itself out on easy prey. He believes that is exactly what he has just watched happen. He cuts the core out of it while it is still twitching and seals it in a case. It is efficient work, the kind you do when you have done it many times in many rifts with many crews. On his way out he glances at the boy kneeling in the rubble. He is not troubled by a witness. The word of an F-rank diver against a syndicate is not evidence, it is noise, and every person in the city knows it. So he reads the letter on the tag, decides it is nothing, and he is right about that for exactly 9 more days. The great door opens for him because it was always going to open for him, then it closes again. Kai stays a long time. He finds all 3 of them. He is 16 years old, and everybody who ever chose to stand in front of him is lying on this floor. Then he looks at the dead weight in his hands, and at the small red point still burning on the corpse of a monster the whole world says he could never have touched. He does not have a plan. He has a question. What else has this been showing me my entire life? The great door opens again 6 hours later because the crystal on the other side of it is still worth money. A cleanup crew comes down with carts and folded bags. Nobody sent them to look for survivors. It did not occur to anybody that there would be one. They find Kai sitting with them in the dark, and they are not unkind about it. A woman gives him water. A man tells him to move so they can get to the bodies. One of them takes a pair of tin snips and cuts the tags off Sable, and off Dolan, and off Wren, and drops all 3 into a canvas satchel that already has a great many tags in it. Kai asks what happens to them. The man says the company keeps them. You cannot take a person off the books without proof the person is gone. He says it the way you would explain a bus timetable. Kai walks out through them, gray with dust, and not one person stops him. At the mouth a clerk marks 4 names off a board and writes beside them the same 3 words he has written many times before: lost to incursion. He writes it before Kai reaches him. He does not need to ask which 4, it is already on the form. He does try. This is the part people always assume he skipped. He stands at a claims window for 2 hours and tells a woman behind glass that the door was closed on purpose, that a hunter was waiting on a ledge, that his crew were put down there as bait. She does not laugh at him. That would at least be something. She asks whether he has documentation. He has a dust-covered jacket and a story. She stamps his form, tells him the incident is closed, and calls the next number. To her this is not a cover-up. It is Tuesday. He tries a district magistrate, who will not see an F rank without a filing fee. He tries a news office, where a tired man explains that they ran a bait story 4 years ago and were sued into a different building. Nobody in this chain is a villain. That is what breaks something in him. It is just a machine, and every single person in it is doing the ordinary thing in front of them, and the machine eats children. Walking home, he finally understands his mistake. He had thought nobody listened because nobody cared. That is not it. They did not believe him because he had nothing but his own voice, and in this city the voice of an F rank is not evidence, it is weather. The bunks either side of his are empty when he gets back. Somebody has already stripped the bedding, because bedding is worth something and the dead do not need it. Under Wren's mattress there is a sock with 460 coins in it. Nobody found that. Kai sits on the floor and counts it, because she counted it every night and somebody should finish. There is no funeral, there is no grave, there is not even a body to argue about because the company keeps those 2, for the same reason it keeps the tags. He takes out the relic and puts it on the floor beside the coins. It is dull now, dead metal. It does not glow, it does not hum, it does nothing at all when he pulls the trigger. He sits with it until the lamps outside go out, and somewhere in those hours he stops grieving and starts thinking, and those turn out to be two very different states. Because there are things that do not add up, and he has spent his whole life being the only person in the room who notices when something does not add up. A hunter was already on that ledge. Somebody had to schedule him. Somebody had to seal the door on a timer and open it again on a timer. Somebody printed a loss report before anybody was lost. And somebody harvested a core out of that thing and put it in a case, and a case has to go somewhere, and things that go somewhere leave paper behind them. This was not one cruel man, it was an operation with a schedule and a budget and a filing system, which means it has happened before, which means it will happen again in 8 days or 10 or 12 to somebody else's wren. He is not going to get justice for his crew. He works that out on the floor of that room and he never argues with it again. Nobody is going to punish anybody for Sable or Dolan or Wren. But an operation can be broken, and the one thing this whole machine cannot survive is somebody putting its own paperwork in front of 10,000 people who already suspect. He needs to know what he is carrying. He needs to know what a dead thing on a guard's hip does when it is full, and there is exactly one man in this district who can tell him. In 9 days a syndicate will fall, and none of the people who ran it will ever understand that it happened, because a boy sat on a floor with 460 coins and could not stop noticing things. The sprawl belongs to nobody, which is another way of saying it belongs to whoever is still awake at 4 in the morning. At 4 in the morning, that is Old Man Jin. Jin deals in salvaged ether tech and other people's secrets. He has outlived 3 syndicates by knowing exactly what a thing is worth and exactly what a person is worth and never once confusing the two. He knows Kai the way he knows 400 other sprawl children, a face that sells him scavenged wire twice a month and never tries to cheat him, which in this district counts as a close friendship. Kai sets the tarnished revolver on the counter and says nothing at all. Jin looks at it for a long moment, and the easy shopkeeper smile goes out of his face like a lamp. "Where did you get a sink?" Jin says, "not what is it, where did you get it?" They come out of the first years after the change, Jin tells him, when people were still trying to build things that could survive the ether instead of being unmade by it. A vessel that swallows a discharge instead of dying to it. He has bought and sold 4 of them in his life, all for scrap, all of them dead. Dead is the whole point, he says. Nobody has ever made one wake up, collectors buy them for shelves. Which is exactly why a board guard could win one at cards and carry it around for a week without thinking about it twice. So Kai tells him, a rift closed for 14 months, a door on a timer, a twisted drinking half a cavern of raw ether and letting it all go at once. And a wall of light turning in the air and pouring into a piece of scrap on a dead man's hip. Jin sits down slowly on a stool. Nobody ever woke one because nobody ever fed one enough. You would have to stand in front of something enormous and take all of it at once, and anybody in a position to test that idea was, as a rule, already dying. The rest of it they work out together on the counter, piece by piece, over the next 2 hours. It takes in one discharge, it holds one, it gives that one back when the trigger comes down. And what comes back out is not raw fire, it is the same kind of power that went in. Feed it lightning and it gives you lightning. Feed it a shield, Jin says, and heaven help you, it would give you a shield. Then he laughs, and it is not a kind laugh. Do you understand why that is worthless? The only thing you can ever shoot a man with is his own power, and nobody alive is safer from a fire than the man who makes it. One shot, he goes on, counting it off on his fingers. Then it is a lump of metal until something enormous tries to kill you again. That is not a weapon, boy. That is a very heavy way to die tired. Kai answers him without any heat at all. You are still aiming it at the man. And then for the first time in his life, he tells somebody about the points. That he sees them in stone and steel, which the graders measured and called a cheap scanner in a boy's skull. And that he sees them in machines, and in living things, and in the light of another person's gift. Jin does not believe him, so Kai points at a dead power cell on the 3rd shelf and tells him exactly where to strike it, and how hard, and with what. The old man taps it once, in the place a boy told him to, with about as much force as you would use to crack an egg. It falls into 2 clean halves on the counter. Jin looks at the halves for a long time. Any scanner in the district could have found that seam, and that is not what has taken the color out of his face. It is the other thing the boy said. You are telling me, Jin says carefully, that if a man walked in here and set his hand on fire, you could show me the place where the fire breaks. Kai says yes. Jin says a word he does not usually say in front of children. Because he can see the shape of it now. A vessel that borrows any power at all, in the hands of a boy who can find the one place that power comes apart. Separately they are junk. Together they are the only thing this city has never built a defense against, because this city has never once imagined it would need one. Then Jin takes Kai's wrist across the counter and makes very sure the boy hears this part. It will not make you strong. You are 16, you are still F rank, and every single person you are angry at can still break you in half. I do not need to be strong, Kai says. I need to be right. Jin asks him what he intends to do. Kai says he intends to find out how a rift gets closed for 14 months and then opened for exactly one crew. And Jin, who has survived 3 syndicates by never involving himself in anything, hears himself say that he might know where to start. Before he can use the thing, he has to understand it. So Kai spends 4 days doing something that would look, to anybody watching, like a boy losing his mind in an alley. He holds it into a burning barrel for 9 minutes. He gets nothing. He drops a paving slab on it from a second-floor window. Nothing. He puts it against the terminals of a dying generator until his arm shakes. It stays dead. Whatever fire and current and falling weight are, they are not the thing it wants. On the 3rd day, he pays a street performer in the market 4 coins to throw a gift at a wall. She is a low D rank who can make a hand of cold blue sparks, and she does it for children on the corner for tips. Kai holds the relic in the spray of it. The glyphs flicker. They actually flicker, and then they go out again because a handful of sparks is a raindrop and the thing is a bucket. But it is an answer. It does not want heat or current or force. It wants the ether itself coming out of something all at once. Jin does the arithmetic out loud and does not enjoy it. To fill that thing, you need a discharge on the scale of the one that woke it, which means a high-rank gift or a twisted, at close range, aimed at you. Do you understand what I am telling you? Jin says. The only way you will ever load that gun is to stand in front of something that is trying to kill you and let it. Kai turns that over the way he turns everything over. It is not a weapon you carry. It is a weapon you earn once by surviving the exact thing that should have finished you. Which means for now it is a paperweight, which means for now he has exactly what he has always had, his eyes and whatever he can work out with them. So he trains the only thing he can train. For the rest of the week, Kai walks the sprawl and reads everything in it. A market awning and the one bolt it is all hanging from, a water pipe and the seam where it is going to split before winter, a cart axle and the hairline the carter cannot see yet. He starts telling people, it is a small thing. He tells the carter about the axle and the man swears at him and then checks it and then goes quiet. It is the first time in Kai's life that his gift has been useful to somebody who was not a company. He does not know what to do with how that feels, so he does it 4 more times that day. And on the 5th day he answers the question that has been sitting under all of it. In the rift, the monster did not simply die. It stopped. Everything in it went out at once. He needs to know whether that was the point or the power he put through it. The sprawl is full of ether-warped vermin. This one is a rat that moves too fast for a rat, with a thread of blue light running under its skin and a red point burning below its shoulder. He does not hit it hard. He flicks a pebble at it with 2 fingers the way you would flick a crumb off a table. And for half a second the light under its skin guts out and it is just a rat, slow, ordinary, confused. Then the blue comes back and it is gone into a drain. So it is not the force. The point does not care how hard you hit it. Whatever you put into it, it takes and passes straight through the whole structure, and the structure stops for as long as it takes to recover. A pebble buys half a second. A cavern of raw ether buys the rest of a creature's life. That is the whole law, and he is the only person alive who knows it. Half a second is not a weapon. Kai turns it over for a long time and cannot make it into one, but he files it away anyway, because half a second is exactly the size of the gap he was too slow for. And then he starts reading people, which is harder and worse. An adapted dockhand hauls a crate with a gift that makes his arms briefly enormous. Kai watches the light of it and finds the place where it thins, just above the elbow, every time he lifts. The man is not an enemy, he is somebody's father unloading fish, and Kai stands in a crowd and works out exactly how to end him, without meaning to, in about 4 seconds. That is the night he understands why hiding it was never a choice he made. It was a reflex, and the reflex was correct. Jin puts it more plainly because Jin has been putting things plainly for 60 years. A boy who can find the failure point in any power is not a curiosity to a syndicate. He is a tool, and tools do not get asked whether they would like to be used. If anyone above the terraces learns what you are, he says, you will not be arrested, you will be acquired, and the F on that tag is the only thing keeping you invisible. So they make a rule that first week, and Kai keeps it for the rest of the story. He never demonstrates, he never explains. Whatever he does, it must always look like something else. It is a hard rule for a boy who has been called worthless since he was 12, and who has just discovered he is not. Kai will break it exactly once, much later, and it will cost a great deal. On the 7th night he goes up onto the roofs where the sprawl looks almost beautiful, and he counts what he actually has. An empty gun he cannot load, a pair of eyes he cannot show anybody, 460 coins, and one old man who has already helped more than he should have. It is not enough to fight anybody, it was never going to be, but it might be enough to find out who signed the order, and that is a different question entirely. A machine that eats children has to keep records. That is not a weakness anybody has ever thought to defend, because nobody down here has ever been able to read them. Kai has been reading things nobody thought worth reading his entire life. In the morning he goes back to Jin, and he asks for paper. There's a room behind Jin's shop that Kai has never been in. It has one lamp, no window, and 11 years of other people's data slates stacked to the ceiling. None of it was stolen for a purpose. It came in with the scrap. Every sprawl fence ends up with company records because companies throw out terminals, and nobody in an office has ever wiped one properly. It is worthless, 11 years of shipping noise, roster fragments, fuel dockets, maintenance orders. Nobody has ever wanted it because there is nothing in it, unless you already know what you are looking for. Kai knows exactly what he is looking for. He was there. He starts with the only fact he owns. A rift on the Eastern Line, closed 14 months, opened for one crew on one day. He finds the closure order in 40 minutes. It was not closed for readings, it was closed for readings that were too high. Somebody wrote, in a maintenance annex nobody was ever meant to read, that something in there was growing. They did not seal it to keep people safe, they sealed it to let the thing get bigger. Because a core is worth more the larger the creature is. 14 months was not neglect, 14 months was farming. After that he stops being angry and starts being systematic, and the second thing is far more dangerous than the first. To OmniCorp these logs are noise, to Kai they are a body, and he has always been able to find the artery. One code repeats, a private transport on no public schedule, visiting a different rift every 8 days for at least 2 years. It carries nothing in, it brings one sealed case out, and it never appears on a manifest with a weight, which is the single strangest thing about it, because everything in this city is weighed. They spend the whole night on it. Jin makes tea twice and forgets to drink it both times. Somewhere around 4 in the morning Kai lays the transport dates against the rift closure records, and the pattern comes up out of the paper like a face out of water. Every stop that transport makes is a rift that had been closed for months and reopened for one shift 3 days earlier. Kai counts the stops out loud, 29 of them, 2 years and 1 month of a schedule nobody ever bothered to hide because nobody was ever going to read it. Jin asks the question neither of them wants, how many people are on a crew? Kai says 4, sometimes 6. The arithmetic takes about 2 seconds, and then sits in the room with them for a long time afterwards. And there is one gap in it. Kai has dates and stops and a pattern. He has nothing that says who those crews were because rosters are not shipping records, they live inside the company. A pattern is not proof, a pattern is a thing a lawyer calls a coincidence. To make it a weapon he needs the other half, he needs the loss reports. The loss report is the form the clerk filled in before Kai even reached the desk. 4 names, 3 words. It exists for every crew that never came back, and it lives in an office in the lower tower. Records and claims occupies 2 floors of a building Kai will never be allowed to enter, staffed by about 40 people who process the paperwork of other people's deaths for a wage. Jin says the obvious thing, you cannot get in there. Kai agrees, he cannot get in there. But 40 people work in that office, and 40 people have to eat somewhere and travel home somewhere, and 40 is a large enough number that at least one of them has to be having a bad year. Jin goes very quiet, then he says that this is the moment, right here, where the boy stops being somebody who looks at paper and becomes somebody who uses people. Kai says he knows, he says it too easily, and he is 16, and he has never done anything like this before, and he does not understand yet what Jin is actually warning him about. In 9 days he will understand it perfectly. For 3 days Kai sits on a wall opposite the staff entrance of the lower tower and watches records and claims go home. He is not looking for someone corrupt. Corrupt people are expensive and they talk. He is looking for someone tired. On the second evening he finds her, a woman in her 40s who comes out last every night and stands under the awning for a moment before she can make herself walk. Her name is Ada. She takes the long tram because it is 4 coins cheaper. She buys the cheapest medicine on the row in a quantity that means it is not for her. Somebody in her home is dying slowly and expensively. It is the most ordinary story in this city, and Kai is about to use it. He thinks about it for a whole night before he does it. That is worth saying, because later he will need to remember that he did not do it lightly. It does not end up making any difference at all. He does not ambush her. He sits down across from her at a noodle counter on Kettle Row, where she eats alone on Thursdays, and he puts a slate on the counter between them and says nothing for a while. She tells him to go away. Then she looks at the slate because it is showing a list of dates, and one of those dates is a day she remembers. Kai does not accuse her of anything. He asks her a question instead. He asks her how a loss report gets printed before the loss. And Ada, who has typed 4,000 of those forms, and who has never once been asked a question about her work by anybody in her life, sets her food down. She knew not the shape of it, not the transport or the closures or the farming, but she knew that some forms arrive on her desk pre-filled with a date already in the box, and she knew never to ask. They come down in a batch, she says, every 8 days. I always thought it was somebody being efficient. Kai tells her about the Eastern line. He does not perform it. He tells her about a girl who was 12 and had 460 coins, and then he stops because he finds he cannot do the rest of it out loud. Ada asks him what he wants. He says he wants the loss reports for 29 dates, names, rifts, and the batch they came down in. She says no immediately, and she is right to. She has a mother who needs 11 doses a month and a job that pays for them, and every one of those things is on the wrong side of this conversation. Kai does not argue with her. He tells her the transport runs again in 6 days and that whoever is on that roster does not know it yet. Then he leaves first, which surprises her. She comes back on Thursday. Of course she does. That is the whole reason he chose somebody tired instead of somebody greedy, and it is also the thing he will not be able to forgive himself for. She has brought 6 of them, not 29, 6 from 6 different dates because she was frightened and she did the sensible thing and hedged. It is enough. Kai lays them against his dates and every single one lands. 6 crews, 6 rifts closed and reopened, 6 transports 3 days later carrying 1 sealed case out. It is the first moment in 9 days that Kai has felt anything except cold. He has it, a pattern and a paper trail, and the two of them together are not a coincidence any lawyer alive could talk their way around. Ada asks him what happens now. He tells her he takes it to a magistrate and to a news office and to anybody who will look, and that this time he will not be a boy with a story, he will be a boy with a file. And she asks the question he has not thought about carefully enough. She asks what happens to her. Kai tells her that nobody will ever know where it came from. He believes it when he says it. He is 16 years old and he has been doing this for 9 days, and he genuinely believes it. They arrange to meet on Sunday for the rest of them. She says she will pull the other 23 across 3 days so it does not look like anything. On the way out she stops and tells him her mother's name, which he did not ask for. People do that when they have decided to trust somebody. He remembers it. He remembers all of it. On Sunday Kai gets to the noodle counter an hour early and takes the stool at the end, where he can see the whole row. She does not come at 7, she does not come at 8. At 9:30 the man behind the counter starts stacking the stools and looks at the boy who has not touched his food and does not say anything. Kai sits there until the lights go off. Somewhere under his ribs, something that had begun to unclench 9 days ago closes up again, and this time it does not open. 4 days earlier, on a floor Kai has never seen, a woman named Vance was reading an access log because reading access logs is her entire job, and she is extremely good at it. Vance is internal security, not the kind with armor, the kind with a chair. She has worked at OmniCorp for 9 years and she has never once been promoted because she is C rank and the people who decide these things can only read one letter. What she saw was small. A clerk in records and claims had pulled 6 archived loss reports from 6 unconnected years on a Tuesday afternoon with no case reference attached to any of them. Nobody else in the building would have looked at it twice. 6 files is nothing. Vance looked at it because the 6 had one thing in common, and it took her about 90 seconds to see what it was. All 6 came down in a batch. All 6 batches were the ones that arrived pre-filled. Vance has never been told what those are. She has simply noticed for 2 years that they exist. This is the crucial thing about her and about what happens next. Vance is not a monster and she is not naive. She has known for a long time that something in this company is rotten, and she has never once been given a reason strong enough to move. So she does what she is paid to do. She flags an internal irregularity and she goes to talk to the clerk herself, alone, without armor, at her desk on a Friday morning. Ada is not built for this. She lasts 4 minutes and Vance is not even unkind. That is what does it. Vance asks her whether somebody has been frightening her and Ada starts to cry. What Ada gives up is almost nothing, and it is everything. A boy, 16 or so, hood up both times, thin, pale eyes, no name, met her at a noodle counter on Kettle Row and knew exactly which 29 dates to ask for. And that last part is the only part Vance actually cares about. A boy from the sprawl who knew the dates already, which means he had shipping records before he ever came near this building. Nobody down there has shipping records. Nobody down there can read them, which means there is a fence in the sprawl sitting on 11 years of company scrap, and that fence is the actual leak, and the boy is only the hands. She writes it up properly, a clear, careful, accurate report, recommending a quiet review of the pre-filled batches and a search of sprawl salvage dealers for company data terminals. She sends it upward at 9 in the evening. She is not protecting the crime. She is reporting a security failure, which is her job, and she assumes the review will find whatever it finds. By 7 the next morning, 2 things have happened, and Vance was not consulted about either of them. Her recommendation for a review of the pre-filled batches has been closed, not rejected, closed with a note that the matter is handled at a level above hers, which is a sentence she has read many times in 9 years. And the clerk from records and claims has been reassigned. Vance reads the transfer twice. A promotion to a facility 1,100 miles away, effective immediately, for a 44-year-old grade 2 clerk with a dependent relative and no transport allowance. She does not go and look for Ada. She is not that sort of person, and by then she already knows there would be nothing to find. She writes the boy's description into a file of her own instead, and she opens a case that nobody has asked her to open. In the sprawl, Kai spends 11 days finding out what happened, using the only method available to somebody like him. He asks. The pharmacist on the row remembers her. She has not collected the medicine. The tram conductor remembers her. She has not been on the 640 in a fortnight. Her rooms above the dye works have been cleared, not ransacked, cleared properly by people who took the furniture as well. The neighbor says a company van came and that everything was very polite. There is no body, there is no scandal. There is a transfer notice, filed correctly, and a woman who is simply not anywhere anymore, and her mother is in a district hospice with the bill going unpaid. Kai pays the hospice bill with 460 coins. It covers 11 days. He does not tell them who he is, and he never goes back because he cannot make himself walk in there a second time. Jin does not say that he warned him. Jin pours 2 measures and pushes one across and lets the boy sit in his shop for 4 hours without speaking, which is the kindest thing anybody does for Kai that year. And somewhere in the 4th hour, Kai learns the lesson that shapes everything he does for the rest of his life. A witness can be moved, a document in a drawer can be closed, a clerk can be promoted 1,100 miles into nothing at all. Anything that lives in one place they can reach. But they cannot promote 10,000 people. They cannot transfer a thing that has already been seen by an entire district at the same time. He stops trying to hand the truth to somebody in authority. From this night on, every single thing Kai does is aimed at one target, and it is not a person. It is the crowd. He says her name once out loud in a shop where somebody believes him. Ada. Then he goes back to the slates and starts looking for the 8-day transport. For 8 days Kai does nothing that looks like anything. He walks the transport route end to end 4 times at 4 different hours and lets the city explain itself to him. And the route gives him the one thing he needed. A shipment that does not officially exist cannot use the company roads, or the company checkpoints, or the clean, bright arteries of the upper city. Every road it is allowed to use runs through the sprawl. Their secrecy is not protecting that transport. It is delivering it into the one district in this city where OmniCorp has no eyes and 10,000 witnesses. Jin asks how a boy with an empty gun intends to rob an armored transport with 6 guards on it. Kai tells him the truth, which Jin is not expecting. He has no intention of robbing it. Stealing the case gives him a box he cannot open, evidence nobody will ever see, and a corpse's worth of attention. Ada taught him what happens to evidence that lives in one pair of hands. He does not need to take it. He needs it to come open in a place where the whole sprawl is already looking. But a spectacle is not a movement. 10,000 people see a wreck, they talk about it for 2 days, and then somebody prints a denial and everyone goes back to work. He has watched that happen his whole life. He needs somebody who can turn a moment into a thing that keeps going. Jin gives him a name and warns him that she will very probably throw him out. Mara runs a shelter in a flooded underpass beneath Kettle Row. She has organized this district for 19 years. She has buried more sprawl children than anyone alive, and she has been told there was no proof of anything every single time. She listens to Kai for 4 minutes and then tells him to get out. She has heard the bait story 11 times from 11 boys with a plan. 2 of them are dead. One is in a labor contract in the northern fields. The others stopped coming round. So Kai does not argue. He puts 6 loss reports on the table, and one of them is for a crew out of her district, and he watches her read a name she buried 4 months ago. She reads it 3 times. Then she asks him where he got it, and Kai tells her about Ada, including the part where he is the reason she is gone. That is the thing that decides her, not the evidence. The fact that a 16-year-old boy walked in and told her, first, unprompted, that his last plan got somebody killed. She asks what he wants from her. Not fighters, he says, nothing dangerous. He wants people in the market at a particular hour who will not run when something happens and who will pick things up off the ground. Mara asks him what he expects will be on the ground. Kai says he does not know yet, which is true and which she can see is true, and she agrees anyway. The last 4 days are the patient part. Kai stands in the crowd every afternoon while the transport comes through, close enough to touch it, and does not touch it. He reads it the way he has read cracked stone his entire life. 9 tons of armor resting on one loaded joint above the rear axle. It is the same on every pass because it is a machine, and machines are honest. He reads the case too, through the open rear doors on the 3rd pass. A reinforced clamshell with a seam down one side, and the seam is where it wants to go. He works out where the transport has to be standing for the case to come out of the doors and land on that seam. It is a spot about the width of a doorway, 40 paces past the fish stalls. Then he counts the crowd, because the thing that makes the transport slow down there is the crowd, and the crowd has to be exactly as thick as it always is. On the last night he goes over it with Mara until she can recite it, where her people stand, what they do when it happens, what they absolutely do not do, which is fight anybody. One of her organizers asks the obvious question, what if there is nothing in the case worth seeing? Kai says then nothing happens and everybody goes home, and OmniCorp never even knows he exists. Mara asks him one thing in private afterwards. She asks whether he is doing this for the district or for 3 people who are already dead. Kai tells her the honest answer, which is that he does not entirely know, and that he has decided it does not matter as long as the same thing gets done either way. Mara says that is the first thing he has said all week that makes her think he might survive the year. 8 days, 1 transport, 1 tap in one place in front of 10,000 people. He has no power, no allies with weapons, no authority, and a gun that has been empty for 3 weeks. He has a length of scaffold pipe under his coat, and he has never in his life been more dangerous. Market hour on Kettle Row, 400 stalls, 9,000 people, and a noise you can feel in your teeth. It is the busiest place in the lower city, and it has been for 60 years. Mara's people are already in position, and they are doing nothing at all, which is the hardest thing she has ever asked of anybody. Buying vegetables, standing about, being ordinary in 14 specific places. Kai stands at the fish stalls with a length of pipe inside his coat and watches the alley mouth, and works very hard at breathing normally. The transport noses in at 11 minutes past and slows to a crawl, because even OmniCorp cannot drive through 9,000 bodies that have nowhere else to be. 6 guards, 2 on the boards, 2 walking, 2 inside. They are bored. They have done this route for 2 years and nothing has ever happened on it, which is precisely why nothing has ever happened on it. Kai steps out of the fish stall queue and walks beside it, close enough to smell the engine, and nobody looks at him, because there is nothing in this world less interesting than another F-rank going somewhere. 40 paces past the fish stalls, the wheel comes over the spot he chose, and the red point above the rear axle comes level with his hand. He does not swing hard, hard was never the point. He puts the pipe exactly where it goes, with about as much force as a man knocking on a door. The joint lets go, 9 tons of armor folds onto its own axle, and the whole vehicle slews sideways into a wall of market stalls. The rear doors buckle open. The case comes out and lands on the stones, on the seam, exactly where he needed it to. Harvested cores spill out across the ground, dozens of them, still glowing, each one cut out of a twisted that had been fed for a year. And underneath them, a canvas satchel goes over, and 100 small steel tags come out and go everywhere. The market goes quiet, not shocked quiet, the other kind, the kind a place goes when 9,000 people all understand the same thing at the same moment. Everybody in this district owns one of those tags. Everybody in this district has one on a cord around their neck right now. There is not a person standing on Kettle Row who needs it explained. The guards do what guards do. They shout and they grab at the cores and they try to make 9,000 people give back something they have already seen. And Mara's 14 ordinary people standing in 14 specific places bend down and pick up tags. That is all. That is the entire plan. Nobody throws anything. Nobody fights. A guard grabs an old woman's wrist to make her drop one, and 400 people turn around at once, and he lets go. Then the slates come up, 30 of them, then 200, cracked screens held over heads all down the alley, recording 100 steel tags lying in the wet in front of a company transport. This is the part OmniCorp has no procedure for. There are procedures for a riot. There are none at all for 9,000 people standing perfectly still and filming. Nobody notices the thin boy in the tan jacket walking away up the alley, because in this district there is nothing less interesting than another F-rank going home. He drops the pipe down a storm drain 9 streets away. He does not run. He has spent his whole life being invisible, and he has finally found something to do with it. Behind him in the alley, Mara is crouching in the wreckage with a steel tag in her fingers, and she has stopped breathing. 19 years of being told there was no proof of anything, and it is lying on the cobbles in front of a fish stall in a quantity you would need a cart to carry. She stands up on the running board of a wrecked OmniCorp transport in front of 9,000 people and 200 cameras, and she starts to read the numbers out loud. And that is where the evening stops being an accident and starts being something else entirely. Mara reads the first number and nothing happens. She reads the second, and a man 40 feet away makes a sound that people who were there still do not like to describe. The numbers are not names, but every family in this district knows their own numbers, because a tag number is the only thing the company ever gave them that was theirs alone. She reads for 2 hours, somebody brings her a crate to stand on, somebody else brings a lamp, nobody leaves. The guards do not stop her, because 6 men cannot arrest an old woman in front of 9,000 people who are already at the edge of something, and because at some point in the second hour, the guards start listening too. One of them is 19 and from 4 streets over. He hears a number he knows. Nobody ever thinks about what a company does to its own low-ranked people until one of them is standing in a crowd hearing his cousin's number read out. By midnight, the footage is on every cracked screen in the district. By morning, it is on screens in districts that have never once cared what happens down here. And the thing spreads for a reason that has nothing to do with Kai's plan. It spreads because Mara is a 58-year-old woman reading numbers off a heap of dead children's tags, and there is no way to watch it and stay comfortable. In the tower, the directors discover the trap inside their own secret. They cannot report the destruction of a transport that does not exist. They cannot demand the return of cargo that was never declared. Every lie they would need to tell to make this go away requires admitting the first one. For 50 years, this company has been untouchable, and it was never the guards that made it so. It was that nobody could ever prove anything. A boy with a pipe took that away in 11 seconds. Down in the sprawl, something is happening that Mara has been trying to make happen for 19 years and has never once managed. Nobody riots, that is the extraordinary part. Instead, 600 divers do not go to work. They do not march or shout or break anything. They simply stay in their rooms, and the crystal does not come up out of the ground, and by the second day, the towers start to notice in the only place they ever feel anything. Mara is not sentimental about it. She tells her people this will last 4 days at most, because 4 days is how long a sprawl family can go without a shift. So they have 4 days to turn a stoppage into something that survives them going back to work. She sends people out with copies of the 6 loss reports and a very simple instruction: get it into hands outside this district. Kai spends those 4 days doing something nobody expects, including Jin. He does nothing. He does not go to the plaza. He does not go near Mara. He does not let a single person outside that shop learn that there is a boy attached to any of this. Jin asks him whether he wants to see what he made. Kai says that the moment this has a face on it, it stops being 9,000 people and becomes one boy, and one boy can be transferred 1,100 miles. It is the smartest thing he does in the whole affair, and he learned it from a woman who is not there to be thanked for it. On the 3rd day of the stoppage, the directors do the only thing they know how to do. They stop arguing about the evidence and start arranging for the problem to stop existing. They do it the way you decide anything else in a meeting, and then they go to lunch. 2 orders leave that room. One of them goes to a hunter. The other goes to a woman in a plain office on the 9th floor who has been asking for 4 days to be allowed to look at the wrecked transport. Vance gets her authorization at 4 in the afternoon. It is not what she asked for. It gives her the wreck and no support and a deadline and a note that the matter is otherwise being handled. She goes down to Kettle Row alone, in a plain coat, on the tram, and she spends 5 hours crawling around a wrecked transport that everybody else has already finished being interested in. And she finds it because she is the only person in this entire company who ever actually looks at anything. A single strike mark in the one place on 9 tons of armor where a single strike would do anything at all. Vance sits back on her heels in the dark in an empty market and understands rather more than anybody has asked her to understand. This was not an accident. This was not sabotage by somebody strong. Somebody stood in a crowd next to 9 tons of moving steel and knew exactly where to hit it. Vance writes the truth in a report, and the truth is the last thing anybody in that building wants on a Tuesday. She writes that the transport was disabled by one precise strike. She writes that the person who did it needed no strength, no gift they could detect, and no accomplice inside the escort. And she writes the sentence that gets the whole report dismissed. She writes that the same individual almost certainly approached the records clerk 11 days earlier, and that the company transferred away its only witness before she could be properly questioned. The response takes 90 minutes. She is thanked for her diligence. She is reminded that the enforcement track is being handled at a level above hers. She is instructed to close her file. Vance reads it and then sits for a while, and then does the thing she has done for 9 years, which is exactly what she is told, plus one small private thing that she is not. In the notebook she writes he had the shipping dates first, which means salvage, which means offense, which means 11 years of company scrap sitting in somebody's back room in the sprawl. What OmniCorp does next has nothing to do with Vance, and it works far better than anything she suggested. They do not deny the tags. Denying them was never possible. Instead, on the 4th morning, they explain them. A statement of regret, an acknowledgement of an unacceptable backlog in the processing of industrial fatalities, an apology for the distress caused by the improper storage of decommissioned identification. They release 2 years of accident reports, and they are real, and they are exhaustive, and every single one of those deaths is genuinely an accident, because rifts kill people all the time without anybody arranging it. 100 tags in a case stops being a crime and becomes a filing scandal, a very serious filing scandal. Somebody will resign over it. Then they bring on an independent rift safety assessor, who is genuinely independent and genuinely qualified, and who has been paid a very great deal of money for 2 years to be available on days like this one. He explains that reopening a rift after a closure period is standard practice. He explains it clearly and correctly, and everything he says is true, and it lands on the 6 loss reports like a stone on a moth. And then, quietly on the same morning, 41 people are arrested across the district for offenses connected with the disturbance at Kettle Row. Not Mara. Mara is far too visible now. They take the ones nobody outside 4 streets has ever heard of. the ones who stood in 14 specific places and bent down and picked things up. Mara sits in her shelter with a list of 41 names and does the arithmetic she has been doing for 19 years. Every one of them has people. Every one of those people now needs a reason to keep standing in the street. On the 5th morning, the divers go back to work, not because they stop believing, because 4 days is 4 days and children eat every one of them. And in the small hours of the 6th night, a fire starts in the wiring of a pawn shop on a sprawl back alley. 11 years of salvaged company terminals burn extremely well. So do the shelves and the counter and the back room with the single lamp. Jin gets out because Jin has survived 3 syndicates and sleeps very lightly. He gets out with his spectacles, 1 shoe, and nothing else at all. The fire assessor rules it electrical, and he is not lying. It was electrical. Somebody made sure it would be. Kai arrives at 4 in the morning and finds the old man sitting in the alley and does not say anything, because there is nothing available to say. Jin speaks first. He says that they did not come for him. If they had come for him, he would not be sitting here. They came for the records, and the records are gone, and so is everything else. Kai counts it out because that is what he does. Ada transferred to nowhere, 41 people in cells, 600 divers back down the ramp, 6 lost reports turned into a filing error by a man in a good coat. And the old man who was kind to him, sitting in an alley with 1 shoe. He got everything he wanted, 9,000 witnesses, the proof in public in a district that will never unsee it, and OmniCorp is going to survive it comfortably, and he can see exactly why. Because he was still trying to win an argument, and a company does not lose arguments. A company loses when something bigger than it decides to eat it. Jin sleeps in Mara's shelter for a week, in a district he has spent 60 years being carefully uninvolved with, which he finds funnier than anybody else does. Mara does not blame Kai. That is harder to take than if she had. She tells him that she made her own choice, that her people made theirs, and that being crushed is not the same as being wrong. Then she asks him what he is going to do, and Kai says he does not know, and it is the first completely honest sentence he has said to anybody in 3 weeks. So he goes back to the only thing he has ever been able to do. He stops looking at OmniCorp as an enemy and starts looking at it as a structure. Every single thing he has ever broken, he broke by finding the place where the weight was already sitting. He has never once added force. He has only ever chosen a spot. And that is the question he has been asking wrong for 3 weeks. He has been asking how to hurt OmniCorp. The question is what is already leaning on it. Jin knows the answer because Jin has spent 60 years selling secrets to people above his station and listening carefully while they were pleased with themselves. OmniCorp is not the top of anything. It is 1 animal in a pit full of larger animals. It holds 9 rifts, which is a great deal more than a company of its size should hold. And 2 rungs above them there is a syndicate that has wanted those rifts for 11 years and has never once had a lawful reason to take them. Kai asks the obvious question, if the proof is public, why has nobody upstairs moved already? Jin tells him something that reorganizes the whole problem in about 4 seconds. Nobody up there cares that OmniCorp kills divers. Everybody up there kills divers. What they are waiting to see is whether OmniCorp can still hold what it owns. A scandal is not blood in the water. A scandal is noise. What a predator waits for is the moment the animal in front of it fails to defend itself in public. And Kai understands finally what he actually built at Kettle Row, not a weapon, a price tag. He has made OmniCorp expensive and interesting and watched. What is missing is the second half. Somebody has to demonstrate where everybody can see it, that this company can no longer protect what belongs to it. And OmniCorp, with excellent timing, is about to send the answer down into the sprawl personally. The order that left the boardroom 5 days ago has been working its way down a chain, and at the bottom of that chain there is a man called Burgrove. He is S-rank. He has been putting down sprawl trouble for 11 years, and he has never once been made to think about how he does it. His gift is called Bulwark. It is a shield that does not deflect a blow. It swallows it. Hit Burgrove with a truck, and the truck is simply gone into the light around him. When they tell him an F-rank is responsible, he asks them to repeat it. Then he laughs, and the directors laugh too, because it is genuinely the funniest thing any of them have heard this quarter. One person in that building does not laugh, and she is not in the room because nobody invited her. Vance sends one more message that afternoon, against instructions, to 3 directors at once. It says that sending a hunter into Kettle Row will not find one hooded boy in a district of 400,000. It says that flattening the market will turn a filing scandal back into a crime with witnesses. It says in the last line that the company is about to spend an S rank to solve a problem it has not correctly identified. Every word of it is correct. She is C rank. Nobody replies. That night Kai is on a roof above Kettle Row when the district's lights start going out in a line, one street at a time, moving inward. A man in gold and white walks into the market and puts his fist through the front of a building, and the sound of it reaches 4 districts. Kai watches from 4 rooftops away and does not move, and does not go down, and does not do anything at all except one thing. He starts reading. Burgrove hunts the way an avalanche hunts. He does not search the sprawl. He simply starts taking it apart and waits for somebody to come and ask him to stop. He is not cruel about it, which somehow makes it worse. He gives every street the same offer. Produce the boy who wrecked the transport, and he will go and break a different street instead. Nobody produces anybody, for the excellent reason that nobody knows. 9,000 people watched a transport fall over, and not one of them saw a boy do anything. Kai watches all of it from 4 rooftops away for 2 nights, and does not go down, because going down would be the last useful thing he ever did. This is the part of Kai that frightens Jin. He is not looking for an opening. He is not angry, or at least not usefully. He is doing what he did to a transport for 8 days. And a gift seen through Kai's eyes is not a mystery. It is a structure, it has an inside, it has joins. On the first night he learns that bulwark does not deflect. A collapsing wall comes down across Burgrove's back and simply stops existing, and Burgrove does not even break step. And the shield gets brighter. That is the detail Kai writes down. Every single thing it eats makes it brighter. On the second night a gas main goes up beneath Burgrove, because a gas main in the sprawl will go up if you look at it wrongly, and the entire street disappears into fire. He walks out of it without a mark, and the light around him is now so bright that people 3 streets away are shading their eyes. Then he does the thing Kai has been waiting 2 nights to see. He stops in the middle of the road, plants his feet, and lets it all back out. Every window on the block goes at once. 2 shop fronts come down. 4 people who were nowhere near any of this go to the district infirmary, and one of them does not come out again. And Kai, 4 roofs away, finally sees the shape of the thing. Bulwark does not destroy what it eats, it holds it, and a thing that holds has to be emptied, or the man standing inside it is standing in a sealed jar with a fire in it. It is not a weakness anybody has ever needed to think about, because emptying it has never once been difficult. You plant your feet and you open the door, and the street pays for it. Kai watches him vent 3 more times over 2 nights, from 3 different angles, and every single time the light goes out of the shell in the same place first. There is a seam, low left, below the ribs. It is where a shield that must empty itself opens to empty itself, and there is no version of bulwark that does not have one. He brings it back to the shelter and lays it out, and Mara listens to the whole thing and then asks the question that stops him dead. If the shield has to be emptied and you seal it shut, what happens to the man inside it? Kai says the honest thing, he dies. Mara says she wanted to hear him say it out loud. Because there is a difference between a boy who breaks machines and a boy who kills people, and she wants to know that he understands which door he is walking through. Kai says he has thought about nothing else for 2 days. He says Burgrove has already put a woman in the ground and will put more, and that there is no version of this where he asks him nicely. Jin, who has been quiet for a long time, asks the practical question. Sealing that seam takes a shield. Kai does not have a shield. Kai has an empty gun. And they all arrive at the same place at the same moment, and nobody wants to be the one to say it. The relic gives back what it takes. To fire a shield, it has to swallow a shield. There is exactly one source of bulwark in this city, and he is currently walking through Kettle Row breaking it in half. Which means that before Kai can do anything at all to Burgrove, he has to stand inside one of those shockwaves. Not near it, inside it. Mara asks him how a boy survives that. Kai tells her he does not know yet, and that he has 4 days to work it out, and that he has done more with less. Nobody in that shelter believes him. Jin takes his spectacles off and cleans them for a very long time, which is what Jin does instead of arguing when he has already lost. The problem with standing inside a blast is that everything in the sprawl that could shield a person is made of the same 3 materials, and Burgrove has already demonstrated what he does to all of them. So Kai does not look for something that will survive it. He looks for a place where the blast will not go, which is a completely different question, and it is the only kind of question he has ever been good at. A vented shield is a ring. It goes outward and level because that is the shape a man makes when he plants his feet and opens his arms. It does not go down. There is a drainage sump in the corner of the foundry yard, 18 inches deep, with a cast iron grate over it. Kai measures it 3 times with his hands. It is not cover. If he is wrong about the shape of the ring, it is a grave that he has personally selected and climbed into. Jin tells him it is the worst plan he has ever heard from anybody, and Jin has heard plans from 3 generations of sprawl criminals. Kai says he agrees and asks him to hold the papers. Then he goes and finds the avalanche, and this time he does not run cleverly. He runs badly on purpose and lets it corner him. Burgrove is delighted. He has been walking around this district for 4 days waiting for somebody to be stupid, and here at last is a thin boy in a tan jacket running into a dead end. He asks whether Kai is the one who dropped the transport. Kai says yes. It is the first time he has admitted it out loud to anybody. Burgrove laughs and then stops laughing and looks at him properly, and for 1 second Kai is afraid the whole thing is about to go wrong in the simplest possible way. Because Burgrove has orders, and the orders are to find out who else has copies before anything else happens. So Kai gives him the only thing that will make an S rank stop asking questions and start showing off. He tells him that a woman on Kettle Row already read every name on those tags to 9,000 people, and that no amount of hitting things will unhear it. It works. Burgrove tears the foundry wall down onto him for the pleasure of it. Kai is already moving. He goes flat into the sump with the grate half over him, and 9 tons of brick comes down on top of a man who eats 9 tons of brick for a living. The shell drinks all of it. Then Burgrove plants his feet in the wreckage and opens his arms and empties himself. The yard disappears in a ring of golden force. It goes outward and level, exactly as a boy on a rooftop wrote down 3 nights ago. And 18 inches beneath it, in black water, with his arm and the relic held straight up into the light, Kai finds out that he was right. The relic drinks not all of it enough. Being right does not mean being unhurt. The arm that was above the grate takes most of what the relic did not, and the pressure of the ring comes down through the iron and through him. 3 ribs, most of the hearing in his left ear, which never fully comes back. A burn from wrist to shoulder that Jin will spend 6 weeks pretending is healing normally. Above him, Burgrove looks around a demolished yard with no boy in it, decides the body is under the rubble somewhere, and does not care enough to dig. It is the single luckiest thing that happens to Kai in the entire story, and it happens because an S-rank cannot imagine that anything he stepped on might still be alive. Mara's people come over the wall 4 minutes later. They were told to wait for the light to stop and then run, and every one of them does exactly that, which is the only reason there is anybody to pull him out. He is unconscious for most of a day. When he wakes up in the shelter, Jin is sitting beside him, and the first thing Kai does is check his hand. The relic is still in it, nobody could get it out, and it is not dull anymore. Jin looks at the thing burning gold in a 16-year-old boy's ruined hand, and says the truest sentence anybody says in this whole affair. "One shot," he says, "everything you have ever done, and everything you are about to do, and it is all standing on one shot." Kai can barely lift his left arm, so he does the planning sitting down, which turns out to suit him. One shot of bulwark, it will seal a seam. It will not break armor, it will not stop a fist, and if he uses it on anything except that one purpose, he is a boy in a dead-end alley with a dead lump of metal. Which means Burgrove has to be full when it happens. A sealed shield with nothing in it is an inconvenience. A sealed shield with a great deal in it is something else. So Kai needs to give an S rank something enormous to swallow, at close range, in a place he can control. And there is exactly one thing in this district that is enormous. The ether tap at the edge of Kettle Row is a cathedral built around a caged rift. It drains a small rift dry and pumps the power up to the golden towers, and it has been doing it for 9 years. When Kai says it out loud, Mara stands up and walks to the other end of the shelter and stands there with her back to them for a while. When she comes back, she says one sentence. There are 11,000 people living downwind of that reactor. She is not asking a question. She is deciding, right there, whether the boy in front of her is a different sort of thing to the men in the tower, and she is entirely prepared to find out that he is not. That is why I came to you first, Kai says. I cannot move 11,000 people. You have been moving them your whole life. If they are not clear, I do not do it. And Mara sits down on the crate and puts her face in her hands for a moment, because in 19 years nobody from outside this district has ever once treated its people as something to be protected rather than something to be spent. Then she takes over and it stops being Kai's plan. It becomes hers and it becomes very much better. She will not evacuate a district by telling it the truth. Panic kills more people than blasts do, and a rumor about a reactor would empty Kettle Row into the narrow streets and crush 40 of them against the tram bridge. So she does what she has done for 19 years. She calls a district assembly. Free grain distribution, 3 streets uphill, at the exact hour that Kai needs everybody 3 streets uphill. Nobody in the sprawl has ever missed a free grain distribution. It is the single most reliable mechanism in this entire district, and it has never once needed a weapon. Kai looks at what she has built in 40 minutes and understands that he has been the least capable person in this room since the day he walked into it. There is one more thing, and Jin raises it because somebody has to. If a reactor ruptures, the towers lose power for 2 days and the sprawl loses it for 2 months. This district will pay for this. So Mara puts it to them, all of them. 26 organizers in a flooded underpass, and she lays out exactly what it will cost and exactly what it might buy, and then she asks. They argue for 2 hours. 4 of them say no and go home, and nobody stops them, and nobody says anything about it afterwards. The rest vote to do it, not because they believe in Kai. Most of them still have not met him. They do it because they have been reading numbers off dead children's tags for 9 days. The grain assembly is called for the following evening. Word goes out through the only network in this city that has never once failed, which is women talking to each other in queues. Kai spends that day doing the last piece, and it is the piece nobody else can do. He walks the reactor perimeter twice in daylight, dressed as what he is, which is a diver looking for work. And through the wire he reads it the way he has read everything since he was 12. 9 years of load, resting on one welded collar low on the containment ring. It has been failing quietly for 4 years. Nobody has looked because looking costs money and the thing has not broken yet. On the way back he passes a wall where somebody has chalked a crude revolver next to a letter F. He stops and looks at it for a while, and then keeps walking. That night Mara asks him whether he expects to come back, and Kai gives her an answer that she repeats, years later, to a great many people. He says that he has 1 shot, 3 broken ribs, and no plan for afterwards, and that afterwards has never once been the part he was good at. At 6 the following evening, 11,000 people begin walking uphill for free grain, and a boy with a length of pipe walks the other way. Kai does not have to find Burgrove. He only has to be seen once by anybody on a street where a golden man is already breaking things. He pulls his hood back and stands in the open until somebody screams, and then he waits until the light at the end of the street changes direction. Then he runs badly, holding his side, which for once is not acting. And Burgrove follows exactly the way he has followed everything for 11 years, not around, through. His strength has always chosen his route for him, which is why somebody else can choose it for him. The route Kai has chosen runs down 4 streets that are completely empty, on an evening when 11,000 people are 3 streets uphill queuing for grain. Burgrove notices he is not stupid, whatever else he is. He notices that a district which has been full of terrified faces for 6 days is suddenly empty, and it slows him for about 4 seconds. Then he sees the boy limping toward the reactor gates, and decides that a wounded F-rank running into the most heavily defended building in the district is the least dangerous thing he has ever seen. He is not wrong about the defenses. There are 18 guards on that perimeter. There were at least, until an evacuation notice went out this afternoon under a company code that Jin has been able to forge since before Kai was born. Inside, the tap is a cathedral built around a caged rift, and the noise of it fills everything. Kai puts his back to the core and stops running. Burgrove comes through the outer wall rather than the door, because of course he does, and then stops, because even he can feel what he is standing next to. He tells Kai to come away from the core. It is almost reasonable. He has orders, and the orders are to find out who else has copies, and a dead boy in a reactor tells him nothing. So he offers the mercy the strong always offer. Talk Neil, and it will be quick. He genuinely believes this is generous, and by the standards he has been given, it is. Kai uses the time to ask him a question instead. He asks whether Burgrove knows what the transport was carrying. And Burgrove says the thing that Kai will think about for years afterwards. He says he does not ask. He says that is what makes him useful. Kai says that is the whole problem with strength. It has never once had to be curious. Burgrove stops being patient. He crosses the chamber in 2 steps and takes Kai off the floor by the front of his jacket, and there is nothing at all that a 16-year-old can do about that. Which is fine. Kai has been trying to get within arm's length of that shield for 4 days, and a man who picks you up has kindly solved the problem for you. Low left below the ribs, the seam. Kai taps it with the end of the pipe, about as hard as a man knocking on a door. And bulwark goes out, all of it all at once, the way a mountain of a creature went out in a rift 5 weeks ago, because the point has never cared how hard you hit it. It lasts half a second. A pebble buys half a second, and Kai has known exactly what half a second is worth since the night he was half a second too slow. He drops, he does not run. He turns and puts the pipe into a welded collar at the base of the containment ring, with about as much force as a man knocking on a door. He does not use the gun. The gun has exactly one thing in it, and it is not for this. 9 years of load lets go at once. A caged rift comes out sideways into the chamber, and Burgrove does what Burgrove has done successfully every single day for 11 years. He floods bulwark to full, and he swallows all of it. It works, it always works. He stands inside a burning sun holding every scrap of it, and he is laughing, and he starts to plant his feet to let it back out. And Kai, who has been face down behind a cable housing since before the collar went, is looking at a seam low on the left, below the ribs, where a shield that must empty itself opens to empty itself. He fires Burgrove's own power into that seam, not to break the shield. He could not break a shield if he had 10 of these, only to close a door. The vent shuts, and a man who has never in his life had to think about how his own gift works finds out, in about 1 second, that he has exactly 2 options, and they are the same option. He can hold it and be crushed by a reactor with nowhere to go, or he can drop the shield and be standing bare in the middle of the thing it is holding. His strength was never protecting him. It was a room, and somebody has just shut the door from the outside. The strongest shield in the world does exactly what it was built to do. It holds against everything, including the man it was meant to save. Kai does not stay to watch. He is already moving, with 3 broken ribs and a burned arm, because the reactor is dying, and this was never about killing one hunter. 3 streets uphill, 11,000 people are standing in a grain queue when the sky behind them turns white, and every single one of them turns around at the same moment. OmniCorp sent its strongest man to end a boy. By morning the boy is still breathing, the reactor is slag, the district is dark and cold and entirely alive, and everybody in the sprawl has seen the same impossible thing. The golden towers can blade. A syndicate does not fall when its strongest man dies. It falls on the morning when everybody who was afraid of it stops being afraid at the same time. By 9 in the morning, the towers know that an S-rank asset is gone, that a 9-year reactor is slag, and that neither of those things can be explained without explaining the transport. There's a woman on the 9th floor who predicted all of it in writing 11 days ago, and not one person in that room mentions her name. Kai is in the shelter with a splint on his arm when Jin explains what has actually happened, and it is not what Kai thought he was doing. He has not damaged OmniCorp's finances. Reactors are insured. He has done something far more expensive. He has demonstrated in front of the whole city that OmniCorp can no longer hold what it owns. Which is the exact smell that predators upstairs have been waiting 11 years to catch. So Kai does not send the proof to the crowd this time. The crowd has already done its work and paid for it. He sends it upward to people who will not care about a single dead child in it and will care enormously about what it is worth. Everything goes, the dates, the closures, the transport, the 6 reports, and the reactor, which is the only part they will actually read. To the syndicate 2 rungs above them, none of this is a scandal. It is an invitation, a lawful reason to take everything a wounded rival can no longer defend. Kai never needed an army. He needed to make one strong thing look edible to another strong thing, and then get out of the way. It takes 4 days. It is not a riot that ends OmniCorp. It is a hostile acquisition wearing the face of justice, carried out by people the sprawl will never be allowed to meet. The directors who fed children into the dark are marched out of their own building, not for the children, for letting it become provable. In this world, those have always been the same crime. Vance is not arrested and not promoted. She is retained because competent people are cheap to keep and expensive to replace, and on the third day she is handed a new badge with a new sigil on it and told to carry on. That evening she opens her private file and adds one line to a description of a thin boy in a hooded jacket and puts it away again. And Kai makes himself look straight at what he has actually done. The sprawl did not get free. The sprawl got a new owner, and the new one is older and smarter and will not be careless enough to leave tags in a case. 41 people are released, nobody is compensated. The power comes back in the market district after 9 weeks and in the lower rows after 4 months. Mara finds him at the edge of the celebration and asks whether it is over. He tells her the truth because she is the one person he refuses to lie to. That was the smallest one. Then she puts 3 small steel tags into his hand. She had been reading numbers off tags for 9 days, and somewhere in all of it she found the 3 he had not been able to make himself look for. Sable, Dolan, Wren. He says the 3 names out loud in a shelter to an old man who believes him and a woman who has buried more children than she can count. It is the only funeral any of them will ever get. He adds a 4th name that nobody else in the room knows and does not explain it, and neither of them asks. Out in the alleys they have already decided what to call him, and it started as a joke, the way these things do. A cipher is a thing that looks like meaningless nonsense until somebody knows how to read it. The sprawl thought that was very funny as a name for an F rank. They did not know how right they were. Far above all of it, in a room Kai does not know exists, somebody is saying that name for the first time. The syndicate that swallowed OmniCorp answers to older masters, and those masters are not troubled that a company fell. Companies fall, they are troubled by how. An F rank, no gift worth recording, and in 5 weeks he took apart a syndicate and turned the strongest man it owned into his own coffin. For 50 years these people have sorted every human being alive into the fit and the unfit, and every scrap of their power rests on that sorting meaning something. And a boy at the very bottom of it has just demonstrated in public that it means nothing at all. That is not an embarrassment. That is the one idea that could take apart everything they have built. They do not send a hunter. Hunters are for problems you already understand. They do something far more patient and far more dangerous. They begin to pay attention. Kai does not know they are watching. He knows the shape of the war, which is better. OmniCorp believed that fitness was strength, and he has buried that belief under its own reactor. There are 4 more towers on that skyline, and every one of them is built on a different lie about which people are worth keeping alive. He is still F rank, still the weakest person on that skyline, still 1 stolen shot at a time, and the gun is empty again. He would not have it any other way because every one of them will look at him and see nothing, right up until the moment it is too late. They sorted him to the bottom and called it the law of the strong. He's going to climb it from the bottom, tower by tower, and teach them what the law actually says. It was never the strongest who survive. It is the one who adapts.